Councilmember Krikorian is on his way up, and Councilmember Bernard Parks is in the EERC meeting and will join us if he is able to. So with that, we have items 2 through 4. Well, we have a speaker card on item number 2, so I'm going to pull item number 2. On items 3 and 4, those are essentially routine business improvement district items, and we'll hold off until Mr. Krikorian comes to vote on that so that we can have a committee report. So on that item number, I'll take up item number 1, and as soon as Mr. Krikorian comes, we will take up items 2, 3, and 4. So let's move forward with item number 1. City Clerk?
Item number 1. Item number 1 is a city clerk report relative to the proposed business improvement district to be called the Los Angeles Tourism Marketing District.
Good afternoon. Miranda Pastor from the Office of the City Clerk. For more than 2 years, efforts have been underway, and the City Clerk has been working with the consultant, Civitas, for the establishment of a business improvement district that has a goal of increasing occupancy rates for hotels with 50 or more rooms in the city of Los Angeles. These hotels have experienced ever-decreasing occupancy rates compared to other cities that have tourism marketing districts such as San Diego and San Francisco. The objective of the Los Angeles Tourism Marketing District is to reverse that trend by providing special benefits of marketing, sales, and administrative programs for hotels with 50 or more units, or 50 or more rooms. This Los Angeles Tourism Marketing District is business-based and is being established in accord with Section 36600 and sequence of the California Streets and Highways Code. The special benefits that will be provided through an assessment for each hotel with 50 or more rooms at 1.5% of the gross room rental revenue. The LATMD plans receipts in amount of $11.5 million annually for these special benefit programs. The approval process requires signed petitions representing 50% of the hotel business owners of their gross receipts. Petitions in favor of the Los Angeles Tourism Marketing District have been received representing 70.57% of the gross receipts for hotels with 50 or more rooms in the city of LA. Additional requirements are a notice mailed to the owners of the hotels with 50 or more rooms, a public meeting, a public hearing, as well as ordinances of intention and establishment. Several findings must be approved, including an exemption from Proposition 26. The business-based assessment is not a tax in accord with Exemption 1 of Proposition 26, which states, a charge imposed for a specific benefit conferred or privilege granted directly to the payor that is not provided to those not charged and which does not exceed the reasonable cost to local government of conferring the benefit or granting the privilege. I wanted to make a note that in our clerk report, we've suggested contracting with LA Inc. As the Homeowners Association. But I need to make a correction to that because a homeowners association has been created called the LATMD Inc., which is comprised of hotel owners that are located in this business improvement district. Hotel owners representing hotels with 50 or more rooms.
Yeah, you said homeowners. I think you meant hotel owners.
Well, yeah, it's called the Homeowners Association, but it's actually comprised of hotel owners. Owners Association, excuse me. So we're asking for an amendment to the clerk report to change it from a contract with LA Inc. to a contract with LATMD Inc. In addition to that, approval is requested to contract with MR Grant in accord with Charter Section 371E and 10. The City Court requests approval of the report, the findings, and the ordinance of establishment. We have the consultant, John Lambert from Civitas, as well as Mark Lieberman from LA Inc., who has also been instrumental in getting this program moving forward for the establishment of the Los Angeles Tourism Marketing District. And they are available here if you have any questions.
Essentially, this is an industry desired organization, and the request comes from the actually the participants in the assessment. And yes, I do have cards that I didn't know about. So this will essentially create a program to increase, hopefully increase the occupancy and tourism to the city of Los Angeles as a whole, and specifically to these participants. We have a number of speaker cards. I think it covers the people that you mentioned. I'm not sure. So,
Mark Lieberman and John Lambert?
No.
Okay.
You don't have to. So please come forward if you would. Just tell us what the general intent in non-city clerk language, what the specific goal is here.
Try to talk in that language.
Yeah.
Mark Lieberman, LA.
No, don't. Just tell the folks who are listening what this means.
Yeah. What we're trying to do is, of course, create a really sustainable source of revenue to market the hotels, to increase both their occupancy and hopefully their rates. Today, we of course are competing with not just cities here in California, but throughout the country. And even by taking a look at California's landscape, we note that today there are over 50 cities in California that have created tourism marketing districts. We would use these, the tourism marketing district would use these funds for dedicated people to sell and promote Los Angeles, to bring more people for both meetings, conventions, people that would, of course, stay in our hotels. There also would be dedicated sales staff for all of the regions in the city that, again, would be selling hotel rooms for all of our hotels. Today we are at a competitive disadvantage as our competitors or other cities throughout the country have much more revenue monies to spend in both marketing and selling their cities to increase their occupancy and rates. If you take a look at our occupancies over the last 5 years, our occupancy for the city of Los Angeles has been averaged about 72%. But if we take a look at 2010, we were down to about 68%. So we have much work to do. We believe that, I should say, the hotels believe that with this increased revenue, they will be able to use these monies to, of course, bring up the occupancy and hopefully bring up the rates, which is a real benefit, of course, to the city of Los Angeles.
Thank you very much. We have 5 cards, all supporters of this item. So if you would step forward and make your brief comments, I'd appreciate it. Bert Seneca, representing Beverly Garland Hotel. Bob, I believe it's Amano, from the Hotel Association of Los Angeles. If you can all find a seat, I'll just call you up all at the same time. Kathy Falk from the Omni Hotel. John Marco from Kawada Hotel, and Russell Brown from HDBID. Oh, I'm sorry, that's item number 2. I'm sorry, Mr. Brown, you don't have to come up. Okay, if any particular order.
Okay. Good afternoon, committee. Bob Amano with the Hotel Association Los Angeles. As Mr. Lieberman had just stated, the TMD is very important to our hotels. In representing the hotels here in the city of Los Angeles, as you know, we've struggled over the past couple of years. Occupancy is down, rates are down, downsizing, cutbacks across the board. While this is occurring, our competitors, locally and within the nation, have increased their promotional spending, and they're marketing their hotels and attracting that business away from the business that we should be getting here in Los Angeles. So we feel anything that the City of LA can do to be able to get our hotels back going, to increase our occupancy, to get our rates, generate our rates up a little higher. We need to have those funds to accomplish this, and we believe in the TMD. We know it's on track, as nearly 80% of our hotels have signed off on this, and they agree that it's a good thing. I think the timing is right, and it's the right time to act on this. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Bert Seneca with the Beverly Garland, also chairperson of the San Fernando Valley Visitors Bureau. As the Valley hotels I'm representing today, we fully support the TMD. As was previously said, our city is in competition with many great cities throughout this state, but we do not market ourselves enough to be able to pull the business that we need to fill our hotels. When occupancies were in the mid-70s, now we're in the high 60s. There is a gap to fill, but we have no positive marketing that is really pinpointing to be able to bring business here, especially when you look at cities such as Anaheim that is very close to our destination here that has a TMD and is doing the marketing themselves. Our occupancies, yes, you are seeing occupancies increase throughout the country to some respect, but rates are really not where it needs to be. So if we can increase occupancies and increase rate, not only will the TMD benefit by having these funds allocated, but it will also help the city as TOT tax will increase as well. So I'll go ahead and pass it on.
Hi, John Marco from the Kawada Hotel. We're a small independent hotel over on 2nd and Hill. And as an independent hotel, we operate a lot differently. The bigger hotels have big marketing budgets and things. These marketing dollars to promote the city of Los Angeles, I think are very important to help smaller independent properties. It's not just targeting conventions, but a lot of international travelers. I do a lot more international business than I do domestic sometimes, all over Europe, Australia, and certainly with Japan. We're certainly concerned in the future what Japan holds, and we're certainly concerned of the well-being over there, but that's certainly going to have some effect on us. So, there are other areas that are increasing flights into Los Angeles, Australia, China, Korea, and we've got to work to make sure we get the people in here and help create jobs and keep people working and get our industry moving in the right direction again. So, thank you.
Hi, I'm Kathy Falk with the Omni Hotel here in downtown, and I'll be brief. Just to echo the comments that they have here, this is about marketing our city, and as a large hotel, we do have marketing dollars there, but they pale in comparison to fighting against San Francisco, San Diego, et cetera, which aggressively come into our market and fight for our customers. But just to put some numbers to all of this, last year we paid $2.7 million in transient occupancy tax. So additional marketing dollars, if we got 10 extra points in occupancy by having this marketing fund, that's 100 jobs. It's $500,000 in additional transient occupancy tax revenues back to the city. So obviously we're significantly interested in seeing this proposal move forward. We've been working on it for a couple of years now. It's a very organic grassroots efforts by our peers, and quite a large number of hotels were involved in developing it, working with LA Inc., and I think there's broad-based support for this initiative.
Well, thank you very much. I actually think the City of Los Angeles should the thanks should go to you for putting this together. Anytime you demand services from the city that you're willing to pay for, I think it's a good thing. And in this
We wanted you
particular
to pay
case,
for 'em.
it benefits the city's bottom line as well. And I want to thank Commissioner Lieberman for his leadership and partnership working with you. And I do want to mention that we are having a special hearing in 5 minutes to raise the issue of the impacts of the tsunami on Los Angeles as an economic issue. Over 250,000 tourists from Japan every year into Los Angeles will have an effect on Los Angeles that I think we need to get our arms around as quickly as possible. So we'll be conducting some hearings. You as an industry may be interested in participating, and certainly our Trade and Commerce Committee will also be joining with us. We're looking at it from a jobs perspective. They'll look at it from a different perspective. And of course, we're also looking at it from a budget perspective. And so I want to thank you for proposing the TMD, for supporting it, and and for working it out internally as to how it's going to be divvied up in terms of effort. We'll let you worry about that. So it's my pleasure to send this to council with an approval, as well as the recommendations for amending it as requested by the city clerk. So with that, we'll send it on to council. I should announce Mr. Corian is not able to make this committee meeting, so we'll just proceed with items number 2 through 4. Thank you very much, and good luck.
Thank you for your support.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Getting back to item number 2, we do have a speaker card. Russell Brown?
Item number 2 is a city clerk report relative to the downtown Los Angeles bid 2011 fiscal year annual planning report and its modification and expansion.
Great. I'm Russell Brown, Executive Director of the Historic Downtown LA Business Improvement District. We have 4 buildings that were right on our borders with Fashion District. When we went through renewal a little bit more than a year ago, we swapped some properties, and so these were, instead of as part of the original petition drive, they're in the expansion. The 4 buildings are the PE Lofts, where we have the board member, we have the owner who's on our board. The Bartlett Building, which is condominiums, that we had 87% petition rates, and SB Main and SB Spring, that the owner is also on our board. So we've turned in petitions. We're ready to move forward. We've been providing those services on a contract basis, and we're just folding them in with the rest of our properties.
Great. Well, thank you very much. We, very similar to the comments I just made on the TMD, anytime businesses are willing to pitch in a little bit, as long as they have control of what they're pitching in, I think they appreciate that.
Great.
But we appreciate the effort. So we will send this on to committee with a communication from the chair to support item number 2.
Councilman, just want to make a clarification that it's actually the historic downtown Los Angeles bid instead of just downtown.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's what it reads here.
Yeah, I understand.
That's what I thought it was approving, so
Yeah, okay.
so I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
Okay, so, and items 3 and 4, similar. There are no, we have heard no negative testimony whatsoever, so we'll move forward on items 3 and 4 as well, with as a communication from the chair to the council. So with that, I think we can start a few minutes, 2 or 3 minutes early on the special agenda regarding the economic impact on Japan. Trade and Commerce was not able to participate in this hearing, but it's my intention to work jointly with them on this issue. Obviously, we were devastated by the world was devastated by the earthquake and tsunami and subsequent disasters in Japan. And I think it's important for us to recognize that this is not a Japanese disaster. It is a world disaster, and particularly a disaster in the Pacific Rim, that has a rippling effect, if you will, on all the ports and other economic activity in the Pacific Rim. For Los Angeles, it represents a huge concern. As I mentioned, over 250,000 tourists from Japan to Los Angeles. 31% of foreign investment into Los Angeles is Japanese. About the same port activity. I think they're number 2 and very close number 2 to China in terms of their port activity in Los Angeles. Combined, Los Angeles and Japan have a two-way trade of approximately $48 billion a year. And so there is going to be effect. Now, some people are talking about the recovery time period being a very robust period of economic activity. I don't take those things for granted. I think to the degree that robust activity occurs is evident of the degree to which you are aggressively pursuing it. And so I want to see Los Angeles in a position to aggressively pursue that. But I think we're going to have to do some shoring up in the meantime. So with that, I do want to say that we will be conducting a hearing in the port area on April 4th. to get into this. This is sort of a precursor to a much more in-depth review of the effects of the Japanese disasters on the city of Los Angeles. So with that, I'd like to ask people to step forward. I think the first group, do we have a list of folks who are going to testify? Oh, I passed it. Okay. So we have, of course, the city department's most concerned, the airport, the port, and LA Inc. So if the three of you would come forward, this essentially is just going to be a discussion and exchange of information. So we can certainly sort of free flow this. Maybe ask Mr. Lieberman to. Mr. Lieberman, maybe you could initiate this conversation, and feel free to join in at any time. But please, first, if I could have all of you identify yourselves.
Mark Lieberman, President of LA Inc., the Los Angeles Convention and Visitors Bureau.
Catherine McDermott, Deputy Executive Director, Port of Los Angeles.
Mike DiBernardo, Business Development Director, Port of Los Angeles.
Mark Adams, Government Affairs Representative for LAWA.
Okay, do we have the CLA and CAO, or who's?
I'm here for the CLA.
Okay, so, yes, sir. Why don't you step forward, pull up a chair. Yeah. Please.
Rex Zollop with the CAO.
Okay, and
Felipe Chavez with the CLA's office.
okay, so we're covered. Again, Mr. Lieberman, if you could initiate this discussion, what I am particularly concerned with is how to proceed with a joint effort to get our hands on this issue and do what we can to exacerbate the disaster, and in fact even take advantage of it to the extent that we can't change what occurred. Mr. Lieberman.
Thank you. I should mention first that our organization does have an office in Tokyo, and that we have 3 employees that are safe and sound, and obviously we as an organization have said this in country with our employees are pass along our sympathies to all those that have suffered through this just terrific tragedy. I thought I'd talk for a few minutes about the marketplace and what we see and how the effects are on the city of Los Angeles. You know, in 2010, just to give you some numbers, in 2010 we as a city welcomed about 25.7 million visitors to Los Angeles, and out of those 25+ million visitors to LA, 5.5 million of those visitors are international visitors, both international visitors that come from overseas and also from Mexico and Canada. And 1.3% of our visitors, of our total visitors, or 305,000, are visitors from Japan. And it's kind of interesting and, of course, concerning that in 2010, this was the first year in many years that we have seen a major increase in the number of visitors coming to Los Angeles from Japan. In 2010, we had a 27% increase of visitors over 2009. Direct spending is estimated from these visitors from Japan to be about $270 million. Japan is the 3rd highest volume of overseas international visitors, to Los Angeles. And Los Angeles, of course, has historically, over the years, has been the #1 gateway for visitors from Japan to the mainland. In the beginning of 2011, we had 56 weekly flights, and that was about over 19,000 available seats. And it's interesting to note that 6 different airlines flew from Japan to Los Angeles. We, of course, have more service than our other gateway in California, that, of course, being San Francisco. Over the last year, there was a change in travel from Japan to the United States, and I should say throughout the world. And that was that their overseas travel started to use the airport that is located in much closer proximity or to downtown Tokyo. That's the Haneda Airport. And the reason why I mention that is that there are two airlines, both ANA and Delta, that fly from Haneda to Los Angeles. And immediately, we've seen, because of the tragedies that have taken place, that Delta has already canceled their flight from Haneda to Los Angeles. It's also interesting that even 30 days ago, Delta started flying from Detroit to from Haneda to Detroit nonstop. They have already canceled that flight after 30 days. And this
what was the? I mean, you could say the obvious, but what was the specific reason
for that? Is that these are the airlines that have started flying there. This is this is recent service, and they were starting to build up their service, and immediately they realized that because of the tragedy that they just knew that they would take tremendous losses on these routes if they were to continue to fly.
So essentially, fewer people are flying.
Fewer people are flying. I'm
not understanding that. I know it seems obvious, but
yeah. You see, in the airline business, we're finding the airlines are finding those that flying out of Japan that they're pretty full right now, coming from Japan to the United States.
Okay.
But the opposite is not true. And so, they take a look at their
two-way traffic.
They take a look at their traffic. They take a look at their advanced bookings.
So nobody's going back.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they take a look at their advanced bookings and they realize that they can't carry that traffic. And you have to remember that many of the airplanes that are flying into Tokyo from the United States and other parts of the world are making connections in Tokyo. And so that plane might be going from Los Angeles to Tokyo, but might not be coming back this way. It might be going on to another country in Asia, and then coming back through Tokyo as United, which is one of the largest U.S. carriers operating out of Narita, the airport that services Tokyo, has a big hub in Tokyo. And of course, they're faced with, not just traffic back and forth to the U.S., but traffic outside of Tokyo to other Asian destinations. Forecasters, when there's so much has been written about this, and so many people are forecasting, and there have been some comparisons to the Kobe earthquake in 1995. And I think it's it's interesting just to take a look at some of the numbers there. But in 1995, when they had the earthquake, that was a 7.3 magnitude earthquake compared to, of course, the 9.0. And what they saw in 1995 was just a 10% decrease, I should say, in the number of departures coming out of Narita and out of Tokyo. So if you think about the difference in the magnitude of the earthquake, and you couple that of course with concerns and the fears of radiation that are taking place, I certainly believe, and forecasters will tell you, that we are going to see a much greater decrease in traffic from Tokyo. We are definitely going to see a major decrease in the number of visitors. I think it's a little premature to tell you that it's going to be 15 or 20 or 30%, but there's undoubtedly we are going to see a decrease in the number of people coming
here. Okay, now
from
the $270 million that you referenced.
Yes.
how much of that, or what, you said that the overall tourism represents about 1.5% of total.
Yeah, it's about 1.3% of total visitors.
1.3%, but the 270 million, what percentage? I'm assuming it's a little bit higher.
It's a little higher because when you take a look at
They spend more money here.
they spend more money, they stay longer, they spend more, because if you take a look at the total dollars that people spend here, 20% of the people that come here are international visitors, but 30% of the spend comes from those 20%. So international visitors historically, of course, stay longer and spend more. So this is a big hit on obviously the city, and especially as we heard, from some of the hotels that have previously, that they're concerned about loss of revenue that because of visitors that come. Because the other thing is that visitors that come, overseas international visitors, unlike our domestic visitors that come here, about 80% of all of our overseas international visitors stay at hotels, where only about 50% of our domestic visitors stay at hotels. So this is a concern for the hotels.
Yes, and I particularly would, I'm going to request that the CAO and CLA work with other city departments to develop a report on this, but specifically, I would like for the CAO to look at specific city revenue that might be affected by this. In other words, these 270 million, if that's reduced by 50%, let's just say, in the first year, what does that actually do to our economy? Because we know that money probably circulates a couple of times, maybe 3 times, in our local economy, and so I don't know what that represents in terms of impact on the city's budget. Obviously, we're going to be working closely with you. Would like you to participate in the report.
And I think this, from our vantage point, it's as things get better. I think that we're fortunate to be in a position that we have employees on the ground there that will watch this and obviously market and sell for the city of Los Angeles.
Well, suffice to say, it's a very important market for our tourism industry, which is our #1 industry.
Yeah.
And so it could have severe impact. I agree with you. I think it's essential that we have people on the ground there doing these kinds of analysis and giving us direction as to where we might want to go in the future. But we want to know very quickly what happens to the hotel industry, as one example, and then all the ancillary businesses that survive off this market. So thank you very much, and we will continue to partner with you as we move forward.
Great.
Having heard from essentially our tourist branch, I think it might be appropriate to hear first from the airports. So,
Good afternoon, Councilman. Mark Adams, Los Angeles World Airports. Mr. Lieberman spoke to a lot of the points I was obviously going to hit on. Obviously, this is a major disruption to the travel between Japan and Los Angeles, as he pointed out. As he pointed out, we have a bigger hit on the outbound traffic than the inbound traffic. One thing that he didn't point out is that there's a potential that's come out in the trade press in the last few days of the potential for fuel supply disruptions in Japan for jet fuel. So much as you hear on the news how people are struggling to get their cars filled up with gas, there's going to come a point where hopefully the airlines that are still going to and from Japan are able to get jet fuel for those aircraft.
So they may have to avoid Japan entirely.
They're looking at, monitoring the fuel supply. The Japanese officials are looking at monitoring the fuel supply to make sure that planes can get in and out of the country easily. Obviously, in isn't a problem because we've got the fuel here, but coming back, what airlines are being encouraged to do is actually fill up as much as they can so they can at least get out of Japan to someplace where they could refuel if they need to, should the fuel supply become...
This is a critical issue to the entire world.
Yeah.
I mean, because Japan is it's not necessarily, it's as much what is the term, not a destination point, but a transfer.
It is. As Mr. Lieberman also pointed out, Narita serves as a hub for four major airlines, Delta and United, and also for Korean and Singapore, who fly from LAX or a number of U.S. destinations, then connect through Narita to various Asian destinations. Delta, for example, has 182 weekly flights at Narita, coming from 9 U.S. destinations and then serving 12 Asian destinations. So, depending on where you're coming from in the U.S., and United has a similar sort of setup there. And also, Korea and Singapore use Narita as a hub. So, getting wherever you're connecting to in Asia, there's a good chance the Narita situation could be an issue there.
Okay.
As Mr. Lieberman pointed out, Delta has canceled its very recent service to Haneda, but they are still serving Narita because of as much as anything, because of the hub situation they have going on there. Singapore has also was prepared this weekend to commence operations upgrading their 747 service, that's LAX to Tokyo to Singapore, upgrading that to the A380, which they've now backed off of that, and they're going to leave it with the 747 for the time being. That is, they're not canceling anything, they're just not upgrading the airplane as they had planned to. The industry people that I've been in touch with, figure that we're going to see this demand trough for several months, perhaps 6 months, but that as Japan starts to rebuild, there will be, a commencement of business-related travel that now, honestly, business travelers are not going to Japan because meetings that they intended to have aren't happening. They're being canceled. Japanese business people aren't traveling here because the infrastructure problems, they can't get to the airport, and they're trying to deal with problems at home. So the business travel is the biggest hit right now. But as the rebuilding commences and as things start to focus on moving forward, the industry observers think that we should be recovering pretty quickly after a several month period, depending on how long it takes to resolve some of the major infrastructure problems.
Okay, thank you very much. So let's move on to the port.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. While we're focused on kind of the business and industry side, from the port standpoint, we are also reminded what a human tragedy this is, and have reached out to our partners both with the International Association and Harbors and with our own overseas rep in Japan, who are all well and helping us understand what's going on over there. You mentioned that Japan is our second largest trading partner, and so we do expect that we're going to see some disruptions over time. What we know right now is that ports up in the north area of Japan are generally smaller ports. They represent about 2% of our traffic and tend to be not containerized cargo, a lot of tires and auto parts that come from that area. Those ports are all closed, the ports in the north part of Japan, and we're going to wait to see how the logistics system will kind of take over time. Some things are already starting to be trucked from manufacturing centers in the north to ports in the south. The ports in the south, which tend to be the larger ports, Tokyo, Yokohama, Nagoya, Osaka, Kobe.
Before you move forward, you touched on the manufacturing centers. What about manufacturing disruption?
There are manufacturing plants
not producing as much, certainly not right now.
So the manufacturing plants, there are many that have closed due to up in the area of the north area of the country. What we do know is that we expect to see disruptions mostly in auto parts, possibly electronics, and it's really too early to tell the extent. What we do know is, what we don't know is who's going to make up for, or what capacity is there both in the the southern part of Japan or other areas of Asia that will make up for some of the losses there. And we also need to know what manufacturing plants in the north part of Japan will be able to truck goods down to the south that are still open. So we don't have an idea of the extent yet, but we do know that there has been some disruption in the supply itself. And you may have heard that that it is starting already to affect some of the assembly plants, auto plants here in the U.S. Who are seeing shortages of parts. I think we just learned that every car has about 20 or 30,000 parts that goes into it. So we're going to wait and see what that means. Nissan is the first. Well, I'll go back. The ports in the south, the larger ports that account for about 85% of the trade out of Japan, are operating kind of intermittently. They are back in operation, including Yokohama. There were some reports there, but they are back up in operation. There's some intermittent power and fuel shortages that we expect may continue to occur, but all the ports in the south area, which are the largest ports, are open. They represent the majority of Japanese exports and where our American imports go to. We have heard of the closure of several manufacturing plants. As I said, it's leading to a shortage of auto parts in the U.S. Nissan is a customer directly at the Port of Los Angeles. Last year we had about 150,000 autos come through the Nissan terminal, and Nissan's been the first of the Japanese car manufacturers to announce that its assembly plants and parts plants are going to reopen this week. So the others have shut down their assembly plants and their manufacturing plants in Japan, and we'll wait to see when they reopen. So we're really just at an assessment point right now. It's going to be very hard to tell, and I have to be honest that it'll probably be some months before we can understand what this is going to do to the supply chain and the manufacturing system. There's been some reports that possibly auto plants here in the U.S. might be able to make engines and send some over. So we just don't know yet, and I can't attempt to quantify, but we do expect disruptions in the future.
And what about impact to Los Angeles in terms of potential revenue disruption and jobs?
So we have two Japanese carriers that are our tenants, container terminals and container lines that are tenants at the Port of Los Angeles. Most of the container lines, while they are based in one country, are really international in terms of where they call. So again, very hard to estimate if the Japanese carriers will be hit any differently because they call in all of the other countries in Asia, as well as other Asian container lines call at the Japanese ports. Mm-hmm. So again, very hard to know right now what the revenue impacts would be. We'll have to wait and see. There could be some impact on our auto terminal, and we're going to have to wait and see again what the impact is. Nissan's is reopening its plants, but we don't know really the capacity that they'll be able to put out. So again, I can't tell you today what we expect in terms of revenue losses.
Mm-hmm. And in terms of jobs?
The jobs are directly connected with the amount of cargo that comes through, and so if we see in the next few months some decline in cargo volumes, I'm not sure how long it will take us to parse out what belongs to this event and what may be seasonal normal trends or seasonal declines. And so to that extent, if there are fewer volumes, it's both less revenue to the port, to the city, and fewer jobs.
Okay. Thank you very much. CAO?
I'm basically here to listen today. like you say, it's an assessment period. The two revenues that would be most affected for the general fund are first our hotel tax, and essentially it's a 14% tax on everything that occurs in Los Angeles, and that would be just the biggest hit. The second would be our sales tax, because it's a function of restaurant sales and business travel and tourism travel. At this point, it's really difficult to take an event like this and translate it into city revenue. Some assessment will have to be made because the budget's coming up in the next month, and the information we're getting today is very useful to us.
Thank you, CLA.
We'd be very happy to work with the CAO and these departments to compile at least a preliminary report for you for April 4th, and and then continue to monitor the event and see what type of impact it'll have.
I think that would be very helpful. As I said, we are going to have a hearing in the port. What I'm hearing is it will still be too early to do any serious assessment by then. But if anything, we do want to set the community at ease, I think in the port in particular, because that's potentially people might fear large job loss and all of those things. So I think it'll be helpful for us to have a hearing, let them know that we're responding to it, that we're looking at it, that we're doing the assessment, and that we will work hard to protect jobs. And it's impossible to figure out if there will be a significant job loss situation at this point. But I think it'll be helpful just to have that cursory look for the community's benefit, and also to keep us focused on it as a group. I appreciate all of your statements. I can tell each and every one of you are spending a serious amount of time looking at this issue relative to your particular functions, but I think we might gain some synergy if we all understand this together and can partner on these things. I'm going to ask the CAO to be the vanguard in putting together a report for this committee with the CLA on those assessments, and then the Trade and Commerce Committee will join us in the April 4th hearing and sort of catch up on these preliminary reports. If you do have breaking information that is critical for us to move on, please let us know so that we can perhaps focus more attention on a given subject area. But we would look to these three entities, LAWA, Port of LA, and LA Inc. in particular, to give us information. We don't have anybody representing the general business community here, do we? Okay, at some point I would like to work with the various economic groups in Los Angeles. What's the one Saeed, I'm not thinking of the...
Jetro, maybe.
What?
Jetro.
No, what's the other group? The Economic Development Corporation, LA Economic Development Corporation. Partner with them, and we may want to involve somebody that you mentioned. Who?
Jetro, which is the Japanese economic.
Oh, of course. I actually believe I have some notes from them already, and perhaps the Consulate General affected by this would be helpful. So we're going to, if you have any recommendations on how you think we might develop a report out of this committee, and things that you would like us to spend some time on in particular, please let us know. We'll work with the CAO and the CLA to get as much information as possible. This is a very sensitive time. It runs the gamut. Right now we are in recovery mode. We're still in assessment mode, but we're also in recovery mode. I think for the general Los Angeles population, I don't think they recognize that LA has more Japanese either descendants or people, immigrants, direct immigrants, than anywhere in the United States. And I believe it's not only our responsibility to take hold of the human efforts that to help folks, but also the economic impact. But I think we have to claim this disaster as ours, as opposed to what I've heard about that being their disaster. And it's not their disaster. This is affecting families. One of my brother's best friends lost 4 family members already, and they're still looking for another. And so we're looking at both elements. Just to let you know, as a separate item for me, in the northeast San Fernando Valley, where we have a very large Japanese American community and history, we're looking at how we can help with the disaster, with fundraising efforts and the like. And so this is not to diminish that. This is not to say that we're ignoring the human response that many people in Los Angeles are involved with. I certainly will be working on several different levels, both immediately in the community as well as the broader Los Angeles area. Already in conversations with Mr. Parks and the mayor's office with regard to a very large disaster fundraising effort. But then I want to move forward as aggressively as possible on the economic impact, which, in my experience in working on disasters, the success of the economic recovery is driven. It's not something you receive. It is something that you drive. And that's why I want this committee to be very aggressive, as the Jobs Committee, as the Business Retention Committee, as the Business Development Committee, as relative to the Business Tax Advisory Committee, and whatever. I think we need to be very aggressive in ensuring that there's minimal damage to Los Angeles relative to the economic recovery of Japan and LA. We are clearly partners on a community level, on an international level, on a commerce level, economic level, and a human interest level. So I want to thank all of you for participating in this brief hearing. We will conduct another hearing at the port on April 4th, and probably in a month or two have a very serious, in-depth hearing when we have more opportunity to understand what has occurred and as we go through the assessment and recovery phases. So thank you again very much. Let's work together on responding to this world crisis. Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
with that,
are you moving forward the motion?
Yes, we're moving forward with the motion to continue to work with the CLA and the CAO on developing a report to understand the economic impacts of the crisis in Japan.